Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today with myself from SQFI and our guests from Whole Foods Market, Eagle Certification, and Spicy Mo's. We're really excited to have this opportunity today to share with you about a new program that's been launched by SQF called the SQF Fundamentals Verification Assessment. It's a new food safety assurance for very small suppliers. On this webinar, we'll be introducing you to the reasons why we decided to build this program and to make it available for that part of the food industry. And first, I would like to welcome our guests and introduce our guests. We have with us Chad Colwell from Supplier Quality Assurance at Whole Foods Market, Leanne Chuboff, our Vice President of Technical Affairs from SQFI, Justin Drury, from our co-founder and CEO of Spicy Mo's, as well as Roger Roeth, the COO and lead auditor at Eagle Certification. And myself, I'm Carrie Allen. I'll be acting as the facilitator today on the webinar. I'm the Vice President of Business Development and Strategy for SQFI. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today. I look forward to our conversation. And for our attendees, if you have questions, please do put them in the chat. We're excited to have a discussion with you in a panel session a little bit later in the webinar. So please do enter those questions, and we'll be doing that at the second part of the webinar. So for today's presentation, what we're going to tell you about is sort of the unique position of very small suppliers and why they need this new solution and why we believe this new solution will be very helpful. There's a diverse variety of suppliers out there and diverse processes and procedures for supplier risk management and approval. And small suppliers, very small suppliers, are looking for solutions to get their products to market. And so this program, the Fundamentals Verification Assessment, is designed to help with that process. So as we get into that program and describing what the program is all about, we'll be able to tell you about a pilot program that we launched for this to make sure we could test it out and kick the tires before we launched it. So we think it's primed and ready to go for serving the very small supplier community. And we want to help you understand how you can utilize the supplier verification assessment in supplier management for those retail members out there who may be joining us. We would like to help you understand better what the Fundamentals Verification Assessment can do for you in your supplier management program. So the unique position of small suppliers and getting them ready for retail. All retailers have their own process for identifying and managing new suppliers. Standard mass market national brands typically have a food safety program well established, but very small suppliers can be in a different place as new and emerging brands, very young in their process of establishing food safety policies and procedures and understanding their own risks. And so retailers, as they're establishing ways to assess and evaluate those small suppliers, need to have sort of a consistent way of approaching those suppliers and for managing their own brand as well. So the challenges that these suppliers have in the specialty and local suppliers is that oftentimes they're low distribution. So they're only serving a few stores, maybe a few stores for one retailer or a few stores for a few different retailers. And the level of risk may be medium to high risk products. So definitely require some food safety knowledge and assurance that the food safety practices are in place so that the retailers feel comfortable with bringing them on board. And so we know that small suppliers and emerging brands are very much interested in establishing safe practices from the start. And when you're especially selling direct to consumers, everything about your brand is important, and particularly the reputation that your brand has. And as you grow out of the farmer's market, but then too small for national retail, there's those formal expectations from the retailers who want to bring on your product to make sure that you have food safety in place. As suppliers grow, of course, this is an opportunity for them to launch into scale. And so having a program available that helps small suppliers establish their food safety knowledge, implement new practices, it's a way for them to ready themselves to get into the retail market. So it's a great opportunity for launching to scale. And retailers do have this necessary piece of due diligence, making sure that they have checked their small suppliers for readiness. They have an ability to know about the practices of the supplier, and therefore they should take the steps to evaluate small suppliers or any supplier of any size, and especially new suppliers as they're bringing them on board into new markets. And we believe that this program will really be very helpful to small suppliers and for the industry in general to help build knowledge and competencies and establishing those food safety practices early from the start, because then you can build on a strong foundation as you grow and scale, and you know what you need to do as you're adding maybe new products, scaling up to a larger facility, or looking to work with partners who may be in the future manufacturing your product for you. So establishing that knowledge early is extremely important. We think this program is a great opportunity for that. And I'd like to bring in Chad Caldwell from Whole Foods Market now to have a discussion with me about approving small suppliers and the special case that they are for Whole Foods Market as a partner. So, Chad, can you tell us a little bit about how you support small suppliers and why this program was something that was important to Whole Foods to look into?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thanks for having me on this webinar. Really excited and passionate about this this particular topic. So glad to be here. Local products are a huge deal for Whole Foods. We love our local suppliers. If you've ever shopped at a Whole Foods store, then you've definitely noticed that we have a lot of suppliers called out as local as you're walking through the aisles. So it's a really core part of our business. And small emerging suppliers are one of our great sources of new and exciting and innovative products. So I'd say definitely that Whole Foods has a strong culture in helping to give those small suppliers opportunities to move into the retail space when they see there's a good fit. And this relationship that we have with the suppliers is actually very symbiotic, if you will. Some of these suppliers need some help in different ways and to make sure that their products are sold successfully in our stores. And so that's good for the supplier and it's good for Whole Foods Market, right? We actually have a dedicated team of merchants within Whole Foods that we refer to as local foragers in different parts of the country we operate in. And they have a really cool job. They're actually tasked with identifying new brands and products that come from local merchants. And so they're out scouring farmers markets and such and looking for those new brands. But what they do is they actually they provide a lot of information and support to bring to those small suppliers to bring the products to shelf. So they work with them in various different ways. They have a lot of tools in their toolkit that they use. But even in terms of food safety support, we actually provide a lot of assistance to our suppliers just with some basic learning documents. And we make those available on our supplier portal. That you don't see a lot of that out there, but we feel like that's really important. And these learning documents, they cover all kinds of things, but mostly they're focused on how to develop programs and records. And they really help the smaller companies prepare for those initial third-party audits that they have to go through to get qualified to sell products to Whole Foods.
Thank you so much. And so in the process of your foragers going out there and identifying these great new products in all the different places that they find them, how does that initial food safety conversation happen? How is that approached with a new supplier?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It kind of depends on where they're starting from, right? Sometimes they may be starting from scratch, and sometimes they may already have a few programs built. So we kind of gauge where they're at in their journey, right? And a lot of times we'll guide them to that food safety toolkit and kind of help them figure out where they need to insert themselves and where they need to get started.
Okay. And in that process, I'm sure you see them all at all different stages. With the smallest suppliers that are in the earliest part of their process, what would you say is the challenge that most commonly comes up with understanding the food safety risk or setting up the practices that they're going to put in place?
Yeah, I think it's just knowing where to get started most of the time. I think that's the biggest challenge for most of them. And for me, I think the most important thing is that the leadership within that small company, just like a big company, makes this a priority and determines that a food safety culture is going to be a central part of their company. And that's really the best place to get started, is just giving that buy-in and making it a part of the conversations and putting a commitment into it.
Right. And Have you seen, you mentioned that sort of management commitment and, commitment of the organization to being aware of food safety. What do you have some examples, maybe, or just a impression of the companies that have had the most success when their food safety person works with the organizational leaders, or is it typically the organizational leader themselves being the food safety professional at the same time?
Oh, it can go both ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's wearing a lot of hats when you're a small business. And thank you for sharing some of the information about how suppliers can help be prepared for retail. I think that's great insight and really helps us set the stage for why we established this program. So the SQF Fundamentals Verification Assessment Program, again, is for very small suppliers, and there's a kind of a specific definition of what that means, and we'll talk more about that. But with very small supplier food safety assurance, there's these challenges that we've just discussed, is having a third-party audit, being prepared for that, and the cost associated with having a third-party audit come on site to go through either just a GMP or a HACCP certification, or even a formal certification like SQF. And not having those food safety practices in place creates a market entry barrier. And we wanted this program to be able to help suppliers identify their food safety hazards and help them take control of their own awareness of what their food safety issues are with their product. And still, we need to have small suppliers be able to verify on site in some way that the conditions in the facility are appropriate for selling those commercial products at retail. And being able to demonstrate retail readiness, whether you already have a customer or you're looking to show off your business, being able to demonstrate that you've done the legwork in advance to be ready for retail is a huge selling point when you're maybe at trade shows looking to advertise your products there. With those retail buyers walking around, if you can have that initial conversation up front, they know you're ready to go, that's certainly helpful. So a little bit just about what this whole thing is. What is the SQF Fundamentals Verification Assessment? If you're familiar with SQF, we have a program called Fundamentals, which is sort of a baseline entry point into a food safety management system. Our Fundamentals Verification program is a half-day remote food safety readiness check. Typically, the SQF programs are on-site programs for either fundamental certification or our full GFSI benchmark certification, our on-site audits. This program is a remote audit, it's a remote assessment, and it's half a day, and it's not a certification. It is an audit, an assessment. It's not an audit, not a certification, it's an assessment. And what we ask of the small supplier is that they use the SQF fundamentals criteria to do a self-assessment against those requirements. So they can use that as a training tool to understand what they need to have in place, and then self-assess for, okay, what have I done? What have I not done? And set up a report for themselves on, these are the action steps I need to take to fill the gaps in what the fundamentals criteria say I should do. And then once that self-assessment is done, we've worked with Eagle Certification to develop a process for verifying the accuracy of that self-assessment. So we have a third-party assessor take a look at the report, look at the findings that the company identified for themselves and what they've done to correct any gaps. And then a remote visual inspection is done with the supplier site. So we have a teleconference such as this that we're having today on Zoom, and the assessor interviews the food safety person, takes a look at all the program documentation, product information and flowcharts, looking at how the product is made, and do a walk around of the facility to look at how everything looks. And you'll hear in more detail in just a few minutes from our pilot program, getting more to the nitty-gritty of how that process all works. But what you can see, the main advantage here is being a remote assessment saves a lot in cost of travel, and as well as being a half a day, it's a shorter time commitment, and really the preparation time up front and the correction time afterward that you're sort of doing on your own is beneficial for developing your own food safety skills and saving time as well. So I want to get into the pilot program and gets into more of the details about how this process works. And I'll invite Roger Roeth from Eagle, our assessor, and Justin Drury from Spicy Mo's, who is our excellent participant, very, very well done participant on the pilot program for the SQF Fundamentals Verification Assessment. This pilot program lasted over about 6 months. We had about 8 suppliers involved, and I'll turn it over to Roger here to kind of give us his impressions of the program and tell us about the process and the outcomes.
Thanks, Carrie. So, will it work? When I got approached to be a part of the pilot program and to be the assessor, I'm not a big fan of remote audits. I'm kind of an old-fashioned kind of guy. I like to be on site. I like to do everything on site. So I wasn't too open to the idea of remote assessment, but I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And after working with several of the very small suppliers in the pilot program, I did a 180. I found them to be very transparent, very willing to learn, very willing to share anything they could. And actually, the remote assessment worked very well through Zoom or what other means we did with the remote. I was able to see a lot of things out on the floor that I wasn't anticipating seeing. And that was my biggest drawback. But I was able to see a lot of things, see the equipment condition, the facility condition very, very well. And a lot of that had to do with we're dealing with very small suppliers. So a lot of the sizes of the facility were maybe 700 square foot. I think the biggest one I did was 10,000 square foot, and it was a distribution warehouse. Most of them are right around under 2,000. So with all those things in place, I felt pretty comfortable that when I got done doing that assessment, I did a very good assessment of that food safety system. And actually, I did 8 small suppliers, and actually I've done 11 so far. I did a couple last week. And kind of the breakdown of what they are, I've had 4 dairies, I've had 3 bakeries, 2 candies, a cheese spread, and a distribution center. And the biggest negative about being remote is I can't sample the products. So, but that's been a breakdown of the facility. So they've been very diverse categories. So I'll kind of go through kind of the preparation and how this assessment worked and how we had set it up originally. So we started off with like a 30-minute phone call where I would actually call Justin and talk about his business and ask about, what type of products do you make? What size of facility do you have? How many people do you employ? And a lot of times it was 1 or 2 people, or the person I was talking to was the one that did all the work. So I understood it was a very small operation. And then I kind of try to understand too, what's their story? Just kind of get to know them a little bit and just understand how they got into the business. Why did they do this product? And just kind of get to know them. And then after we got to know and understand their operation a little bit, we tried to talk about what are their remote capabilities. Can we do a Zoom through their facility, and will it work in their facility? And the areas that wouldn't work, and usually it was maybe coolers or what they call cheese caves in some of the dairies. I had the client take some pictures and send those pictures ahead of time. And when we're talking about take some pictures, what floors, walls, ceilings, storage racks, every angle I could get. And also I had them take pictures of the outside, so we didn't have to spend time going around the outside. So they supplied that to me ahead of time. So we get all that worked out, and then we talk about what I needed from them. And that was, as Carrie was talking about, the verification assessment, the checklist, doing your own internal audit of what your programs look like, completing that checklist and getting that checklist to me so I could assess where you're at in your food safety system. And a lot of times people not only supplied the checklist, they also supplied every document they had in their operation. They were very transparent. I also asked for the HACCP plan. So I also wanted to see the HACCP plan up front. So at least if I got the HACCP plan and the completed assessment, that would help me set up and get any questions I needed ahead of time for the remote assessment. Probably the biggest challenge I had, and again, it's a learning process for a lot of the suppliers, the very small suppliers, is how to complete that assessment. And I won't, I'll brag a little bit about Justin and his company. They sent us an amazing assessment that it was very easy to go down through and see what they had in place and what areas I had to address during that remote assessment. So once we got all that phone call figured out, they sent me the documents. Again, if they sent all the documents, I did a quick assessment of those documents. but I really concentrated on the HACCP plan and the verification assessment. And that's where I would get all my questions to ask during the remote assessment, was during that pre-document review. And then once we got that done, we'd set up a time to do the remote assessment. And that would be done actually in that initial phone call as well. And then we would do the initial assessment. And basically what we did, it would start with like a 10 to 15 minute opening meeting just to introduce everybody who was on the call, walk through what was going to happen. And there's a few things that we try to cover about the assessment. And then once we get that done, I'd ask a few questions that I had identified beforehand about the HACCP program, maybe some other key items. And then we go out on the floor. And actually, most of the time, I spend at least an hour on the floor looking in the nooks and crannies, and the suppliers are really good about listening to my directions. Like, hey, can we go back to that corner and look at that corner over there? Can we look up at the ceiling? Can we look down the floors? Can we look down inside your blender? And really gave me a good view and a good feeling that I was seeing everything that I could possibly see. And that's what gave me some confidence that I didn't have going into this pilot program. That was the type of confidence I got by going and having the suppliers listening to the directions. And also, again, we're talking very small facilities, so you're able to cover everything and see everything in great detail easily within an hour. So we walk through the process. If they were producing, again, sometimes the only person in the plant was the guy that was carrying the phone for me. So sometimes it wasn't always producing. So we'd walk through, and then after we get off the floor, then we would finish the rest of the assessment, going over any questions I had from their completed verification assessment, or anything I had questions from the documents that they sent me. And we go through it. And if we identified shortcomings, we'd either identify them as a major or a minor. And that's how we would look at them. A major, they had to respond back to me with corrective action. Minors, they have to fix on their own, but they have to get them fixed in 30 days. And that's something that the next assessment we'll look at. So that's kind of how the assessment goes. Some of the learnings we got, and I just got some numbers. So out of the 11 sites, the 8 original pilot sites, and then 3 sites I've just done in the last couple of weeks, they averaged about 8 to 10 findings per assessment. I had the lowest was 1, when she's on the phone today, and I had 15 as the highest. So it was a big range. I issued 13 majors, and they broke down with 7 of those majors being against the HACCP program, something missing in the HACCP plan, or maybe the wrong hazard has been identified. Something was gapped. I had 3 against calibration. I had 2 against records, and then I had 1 against lack of sanitation procedures. And that's kind of how my majors broke out. Minors, again, calibration was a big issue. Just having formal calibration programs. A lot of them just didn't have documented programs. They were calibrating their thermometer, but they didn't do a good job of having the procedures spelled out, or they didn't do a good job of documenting their records. You know, so they would do the activity and they would explain what they do, and they would explain, what their measurements would be, but they just didn't have a record to show me. Another common minor was I had 8 of the sites had issues with records. Some record that I needed to see based upon the fundamentals program wasn't there. Water testing was another one. They used water to clean, or maybe as an ingredient, and all they had was a city water test. And the fundamental program calls out that they have to have tests from a laboratory source. And then I had about, I think it was 18 or 19 actual observations I made on the floor. So whether it might have been a damaged wall or chemicals not being secured or identified, I was able to see 18 different things on the floor, which again gave me confidence with what I was seeing through the remote camera or whatever we were using. I felt comfortable being able to see that. So that was kind of some of the learnings. Now, the one thing, and maybe Jessica can elaborate on this more too, but one of the things that we talked after every one of these assessments, I asked the supplier how they felt about it, and almost every one of them said that they found it to be a big benefit. They said, one, because we were able to share some best practices. We were able to share explain again more food safety practices, and kind of got into some teaching mode sometime during the assessment. And they got a lot of benefit from that. And they also got a lot of benefit from the findings that I had. And again, that was rewarding for myself. And that's kind of what made me a good proponent for the program now, because it felt like I was making a difference. And it was just, they just were very appreciative of the time and the comments that I had during the assessment. So again, that's just kind of a real quick, brief overview of that whole pilot program, Carrie.
Yeah, Justin, could you tell us more? Like Roger was kind of giving us an overview of all the facilities that he was involved with in these pilots, and you're the star example, having only received one nonconformance, so you weren't dragged through the mud or anything in the process. So tell us how you were able to prepare and do such a great job, and what recommendations would you give, and just tell us about your experience.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me first and foremost. And Roger, it was a pleasure working with you. I must say, you're extremely detailed, very thorough, but you did it in a way with really just respect. And it was just a pleasure going through the whole process and talking with you and learning from you as well. This program was, I'm just be fairly honest, it wasn't easy. We went from a basic GMP and went into this SQF GMAT basic program, and there was quite a lot to learn and quite a lot to advance our business on the food safety plan and program. But I must say, at the end of it all, I'm really happy that we did. The whole process of having to do this ourselves as a small supplier, again, was not easy, but just the learning aspect. When I started this business, I never expected to be a food safety expert, and I honestly say that I am now. And being able to audit ourselves, there's something to say about that, and going through the each part of the program just is a huge learning experience. And thank you, SQF and Whole Foods and Eagle. It was just been a pleasure, and anything else I can elaborate on, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that commentary about what the experience was like for you. And so in your process, did you use a consultant, or had you had experience with a consultant before, or did you manage it on your own?
Good question. So we did use a consultant. Before this pilot was put in place, Colin had reached out to Colin. We had heard that Whole Foods was changing the way that they audit, or requirements for the audit. And so when we heard that, we were a little freaked out. And when we saw, what was required, that didn't help with our nerves either. Thankfully, Whole Foods and Colin were able to put together this program with SQF and Eagle. And it really saved us on our resources and cost-wise, and it made it more manageable for us.
Great, thank you. And then following your assessment, and thinking about the idea of expanding your business and giving assurance to other customers that you might have, what do you think this does for your company in terms of? I mean, it sounds like you gained a lot in terms of the food safety competency and your awareness of just everything that goes into it, a lot of preparation. But in terms of your business plan, what does that do for you?
I mean, we're kind of unique in the sense where we have a very perishable item, so our growth isn't really the same as others, where we really grow organically and slowly. With that said, I believe it sets us up in great ways to work with other major retailers and to scale the business, and really peace of mind. I'm not in the facility all the time. I am there as much as possible, being a co-founder and CEO. But just the peace of mind of knowing that my team is trained, my team knows what they're doing, they're following the procedures, and they're following the food safety plan, and just just being able to have that in place and know that our customers are safe and the end user consumers are safe, I think that's huge. I could sleep at night better for sure.
Yeah. And how do you envision I mean, it sounds like you're very confident in your team, and that's wonderful. A huge part of having a good program is that food safety culture, which is, foundational to all of it. But in terms of keeping it up and maintaining the program, how will you manage that to, make sure that by the time your reassessment comes around next year, should you choose to do it again, what are your thoughts about your ability to maintain it moving forward?
Well, it's always been continuous improvement for us. I think that's key. I think just, always know that, never become comfortable, right? Always be engaging and always be just training your team and just making sure that everyone's doing the right thing. And so we do that pretty well, and I'm happy about that.
That's great. Thank you so much, both of you, Roger and Justin, for telling us about that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I want to bring in our other panelists and have more of a discussion, a Q&A. I think we have some questions in the chat, and I want to make sure we can get to some of the customer or the attendee questions. Let me just get out of there. Okay. All right, so we've got everybody on board. Leanne, I think, is also going to join us for the panel discussion. So let me go into some of these questions that we have from the audience. Thank you, everyone. It was wonderful to get the background. So one of the questions we have is, how much time would you estimate you spent reviewing information prior to the actual assessment?
I think that'd be my question. It was usually maybe an hour and 15, an hour and a half. Probably hour and a half was the max I spent reviewing documentation before the assessment.
Okay, great. Another question for you, Roger. Do you have any connectivity testing in the pre-assessment meeting? Did you run into situations where connectivity was not so good?
I left it up to them. If they felt confident, we maybe about 4 or 5 of probably half the assessments I did, we did a Zoom. The other ones, just because of the person's schedule or something, we just did regular phone calls. But they gave me very confident assurances that, hey, we can do Zoom in these areas. We've done it before. So we didn't necessarily have to do that for that 30-minute initial conversation.
Okay. And just in general about the program, and maybe there's some comments from a couple of people on the call, on the panel here. So does the program involve consultation from the assessor? And I'd like to ask Leanne about this, because this is pertinent, because a third-party certification audit, the auditor is not permitted to consult during the certification audit or prior or after. And so, Leanne, how is this program the same or different, or how do we manage that in this program?
Well, thanks, Carrie. So this is a different type of program in that, if you're familiar with the SQF food safety audits that we have that are benchmarked by GFSI, consulting isn't permitted. It is a strict observation and reporting back to the site as well as their certification body. So it's very strict in minimizing any type of, or actually eliminating all type of consulting. From that perspective, we took a different approach with this program in that we do allow for consulting and assistance. And that's what makes this program so valuable for the very small suppliers, because as Justin said, he wasn't a food safety expert, but I believe through this experience, he did get more valuable information on how he could improve and better his food safety system. Ultimately, the ultimate goal is to get to an SQF benchmarked audit. So you don't need the consulting, you just need a verification of the food safety systems you have in place. So I think Justin's goal isn't just to stay still where he is at Spicy Mo's, but to grow and improve. And we hope SQF can be that journey with him as it relates to food safety. And so I know that when I participated in one of these as just a witness observer, I was really pleased and excited, really, because it seemed that everybody was just like Justin, and that they wanted to absorb all that food safety knowledge and see what they can do to better their organization, to ensure, because ultimately nobody wants to make anybody sick. And so the excitement that I got from this program was just that, is understanding and growing that food safety knowledge. And because it's not benchmarked by GFSI, we have a couple liberties, such as offering that consulting. So I'm really excited about this program as that starting leg for these very small suppliers.
Thank you so much, Leanne. So another question we have in here is, did you use all of the fundamentals checklist? And just want to add a little bit of detail. The company has the choice to pick between the basic level fundamentals or intermediate, depending on where they are in their journey. And also with respect to their customer expectations. For example, if Whole Foods were to say, I need you to go get this, and you have to do the intermediate level, then you would want to pick that choice. But Roger, do you want to comment some more on the use of the fundamentals checklist and the self-assessment and how you used it during your assessment?
Okay, so the suppliers have to complete the entire assessment, and the way I try to use the assessment was where, if they had detailed information, which we talked about a lot during that 30-minute conversation we had initially, about giving me the more detail they can give me in their responses, that might be something we don't have to cover during the remote assessment. Now, again, none of the assessments did I cover the entire assessment. You know, like you do an SQF audit, that's the certified, a certified SQF audit, you're covering the entire code. I had to basically use my judgment based upon the documents they gave me, based upon their checklist, and hit those areas that I felt might be gaps, or hit those areas that had the greatest risk entailed. And that's kind of how I approach that, because again, the whole purpose of this is to keep it around 4 to 5 hours, the whole assessment, so you don't have a full day to go through that project. So I'd identify those high risk areas, or those areas that they had very limited information on, and that's the areas I would address during the remote assessment.
I was going to ask a question for Justin about your customer experiences, and I'm not sure how many customers you might have, but for dealing with different types of customers, do you have differences in how your retail customers expect you to meet their food safety requirements? And do you believe that this program will help with that?
Thankfully, at this time, we, Whole Foods Market is our main and primary customer, and we do have some other customers, and everyone seems to be accepting of this assessment so far. So we haven't had to, have any hurdles or any issues so far. So thankfully, this has really helped us and taken us to the next level.
And Roger, do you want to comment on that? And I know that Eagle works with quite a few different companies and stakeholders like retailers. And what is your impression about the differences in different retailers and how they address small suppliers? And would this program be viable in terms of meeting some of those expectations, like as Justin commented on?
Well, I think that as this program grows, and maybe Colin can even make a better comment on this, but as this program grows, I think more retailers will be more acceptable of this program. Actually, one of the assessments I just did last week wasn't even for Whole Foods. It was for an entire different retailer that they had heard about the program somehow, and then reached out to their supplier and says, hey, could you get this done? So I think we're going to see more and more of those type of things as this program gets communicated out to the general public.
Yeah, and I think its approach for bringing in that whole new community of suppliers that are at this very early stage, it just raises the bar and gets everybody in a better position early on in their development. Leanne, what are your thoughts about how you think this program will benefit small suppliers, benefit retailers, different types of retailers? Maybe is this more for the specialty retailer, or could this be good for small brands who want to kind of do a local market for a national retailer?
Well, yeah, I think it opens the doors for the very small suppliers to showcase their products. And in the end, it benefits the consumers, right? Because the customers, they're the ones that want this variety. And this is a way to demonstrate and fits perfectly with the very small supplier. It meets the needs of the retailer and it meets the needs of the very small supplier. And in the end, it's us, it's the consumers that go shopping every day that are going to benefit because of the variety of different products that we see from these niche suppliers that are out there. And so I'm really excited. I'm happy that Whole Foods is partnering with us on this and giving us the opportunity, just as from a consumer perspective, to kind of taste all these different foods that are out there. So yeah, I think it has a lot of opportunity for sure. And again, I keep saying, no, everybody's goal is to grow bigger. So hopefully this will be SQF's, this pathway to even more robust and food safety. It's not just the destination. This isn't the end game for Justin or everybody else who went through this pilot, but it's a journey to building continuous improvement in their operations, in food safety, building food safety culture. So this to me is just the beginning of the journey.
Thank you, Leanne. A question is, so why is this limited to one certification body at this time? So we're partnering with Eagle on the development of this program, working on this with Whole Foods and Eagle for many months, and we're really proud of the outcome. And as you launch a new product and get into kind of kicking the wheels and we're ironing out the kinks, having one partner as we move forward in this initial year really helps us build consistency in process and expectations. And then as the program grows after a year, we're intending to expand this out to make it available for other certification bodies to participate in. We are limiting it to SQF in the long run. Once we do expand that to other CBs, only SQF licensed certification bodies would be able to offer this program, because we do monitor our certification bodies for quality and competence, and the assessors that we choose for licensing or approval for SQF have been vetted by us, and we're very, very confident in their capabilities. But I wanted to ask Roger about the assessors who will be doing this type of work. What kind of skills and background do they have? And we know that you are the primo when it comes to auditing experience, and very well respected and regarded for your experience. And so how can we be assured that the auditors that or assessors that new customers have will have as great of an experience as they've had with you? So I'm sure you probably can't do them all.
Thanks, Carrie. I appreciate those kind words. One of the things I had challenged as we did the pilot program was this is not an area where we'd have new assessors coming in or new auditors. This is something that I think you have to have experience. I think we were looking at 4 to 5 years of experience in the auditing world. So someone can understand what are the hazards, they can think quickly on their feet, because again, you got to go right from doing the walkthrough of the facility, doing the questions, and all of a sudden I got to make a decision. Is this company going to get a letter of declaration? So quick thinking, also patience, because again, some of the clients weren't as well prepared as Justin was and his company. You got to have some patience, and sometimes I was waiting for that verification checklist, asking for it a couple nights before, and I'd get it the night before, and there'd be nights I'd be up till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night looking at the verification assessment for the next day. So I think patience, quick thinking, understanding what is a hazard, what do I need to focus on, because as an SQF auditor, you're used to covering everything, and here you've got to be able to assess and think quickly. And I think the other thing is, again, just being personable, because the suppliers are very nervous. This is something that's very new, and that 30-minute phone call was very valuable, and every one of them said it was important because it helped ease some of the tension that they would have. So I think some of those are the qualities that we're looking for, but the experience is one of the biggest.
Great, thank you. Question for Justin. If you were going to advise a company like yours, a small company, like Chad mentioned in his discussion earlier about there's a variety of different suppliers, different sizes. If there's a company that's small like yours, what would you advise them to do as their first step?
Definitely give yourself time. This is not an easy feat. Plan in advance, and continuous improvement. I mean, that's what it's all about. So, we started this journey probably 8-9 months prior to having the actual assessment, and I'm happy we did, because even up until the last few weeks, there was just a lot to accomplish and a lot to do to make sure that we were good to go. And so that would be the biggest feedback that I could give to everybody.
Okay, great. A couple more questions have come into the chat here real quick, so I want to make sure I address those. There's a question about the validity period of the program once the assessment is done. So I just want to reiterate, this is not a certification. A certificate is not issued, but at the end of the process, it's a verification declaration letter indicating that you have demonstrated the competence to identify and manage food safety risk. It is not a certification in the traditional sense or at all. So I just want you to be, as the audience members, be aware of that. But the period of validity for the letter is for 1 year. And if one wanted to continue with the program, and maybe Chad can speak to this about how they would manage ensuring that suppliers who have gone through this program, if they are, intended to continue on this type of program or scale up. Chad, maybe you can comment on that as far as sort of the steps that suppliers are going through as they grow.
Yeah, I mean, we have varying levels of requirement. There's a lot of things taken into consideration when we talk about what those requirements are. So it kind of starts with the risk of the product, and we have a way of figuring if that product is high risk or not. We look at the scale to which they're selling it within our business. So like you said before, as volume increases, you're reaching more customers, you need more robust food safety programs, you kind of need to take that step up, right? Whether we're putting our branding on it, the Whole Foods branding on some products, that definitely is part of it. So there's kind of a decision tree that we use to help figure that out. But as long as a company similar to Justin's is supplying us in the way he supplies us, we may not require him to go to full certification actually, but we are intending them to get to that intermediate level. That's kind of that next step. So there's a lot of ways to look at it.
Yeah. And one of the questions further down is about who qualifies. What is qualified as a very small supplier? That's actually the definition of a very small supplier comes from FSMA. But then as your business grows and you exceed that revenue cap, then you would not be eligible for this program any longer. And you would maybe take the next step up to SQF Fundamentals Certification, which truly is the certification, or the full SQF Food Safety Code certification that is GFSI benchmarked. So the great thing about this is the foundation for building your skills, making sure you're prepared and ready. And if you've done this, you're much well prepared to jump into a certification, more so than somebody would be who had not gone through this program. So it's a great starting point. And then let's say we have another question about somebody is starting off this month in a shared space. How would they go about having this assessment done? Roger, do you want to speak to kind of what the steps would be for a new company to get going if they're, if they're just getting started in a shared space? Like Justin said, a person needs time to get started and make sure their programs are developed. So Roger, do you want to comment on maybe the approach they would take?
So I think if they're saying a shared space, like Justin, his business is in one building and there's multiple Justins in that building. So I guess that's what I'm thinking is a shared space. I can't really add any more than what Justin already said. You got to give yourself time. You've got to go out and look at the fundamentals checklist and understand what are some of the requirements. That was probably one of the biggest challenges was some of the people didn't understand when there needed to be a procedure written. They didn't understand different terminology that was in the standard that I did take time and try to explain that either in the 30-minute phone call or in the assessment, just going out and understanding what are the requirements beyond what they've been doing now for food safety, for supply, satisfying their customer. But definitely time is something they really, time and effort to understand what the code requires.
Yeah.
I'd like to add to that, if you don't mind also. I mean, yeah, we are a very small company. We're in a shared facility. However, we have our own dedicated space. So we're able to control, allergens and run our program successfully. So I think that's very important to make sure that you do have that type of control.
There's a question here about scoring. Roger, do you want to speak to scoring in this program? Is there scoring, and how are the cars done?
There isn't any scoring. And the way we evaluated was the food safety, was the facility able to produce a food safe product? And that's basically the guidelines. There wasn't any target that if you had 15 non-conformances, if you had 20, if there was still a feeling that food was going to be able to be produced safely, that was the end all to the decision-making process. Where was those non-conformances at? Was it just something that you didn't realize you had to do, or did you have some major issues with your hazard plan, and did you not address the hazard that's tied to your product? And that's kind of what it's looked at. So it's not a scored audit. It's basically looking at the hazards that you have and have you address those properly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for explaining that in more detail. We have a couple questions more about how other retailers will become aware of this and sort of spread the word. And while I discussed that, I thought I would put the steps for getting going on this slide, and we can talk about that in just a second. But the question is, how will SQF expand the awareness of this program with other retailers? For anybody who is aware or not aware, SQF is owned by FMI, the Food Industry Association, which is a trade association that represents national retailers, independent retailers, specialty markets. We've got a large membership of retailers and product suppliers, like brand owners who are making their products. And so we represent those organizations as FMI in many different ways, including advising and guidance on food safety. And so we're very privileged to have communications with the food safety community within the retail space. And we are sharing this information about this program internally with through our communication channels with the FMI membership. And so we're very pleased to have the ability to introduce it to the membership, let them ask their questions, let them understand the program quite well and where it can work in their approval program for their suppliers too. So we're happy that the word is getting out to the FMI membership about the program so that it'll be accessible and useful for small suppliers for different types of retailers. Okay, so I wanted to, for any questions about just the process. So contacting Eagle, first of all, to confirm eligibility. If you meet that very small supplier requirement, Eagle will go through the process of just confirming by asking you a few questions about whether or not you are eligible, and then also confirm that your customer will accept the SQF FEA program. If they haven't heard about it, please send them to us and we can help explain what it is for and about. And then you want to be able to go to the SQF website and download the SQF Fundamentals checklist requirements. And there's tons of information on our website about the Fundamentals program to help you prepare, explore your training options. And the next step is to, once you've prepared and put your programs together, you want to conduct your internal audit or self-assessment against the criteria, whether it's basic or intermediate, according to your customer's requirements. And then you're identifying those gaps, as Roger and Justin discussed, and then you schedule and complete your assessment with Eagle. And then from there, if you successfully have passed that whole process, you jump down the road cheering happily with your verification declaration letter. And so, with a great preparation and following up within the necessary timelines, you can be successful with this program. And so I want to give you the contact information to get in touch with Eagle. If you want to use a QR code to scan, you can go directly to their website page where you can input an inquiry. There's also the info at Eagle Certification Group and a link to their website as well there. So feel free to use that information to make contact. And I'm just going to do one more check on the questions to make sure we capture them all. Would it be possible to go from this 1 year and then the next year's assessment move to full certification? So if you were doing this program as the verification assessment and you had held that letter for a year, or you felt like you were ready then to jump to an SQF certification audit, you could go to your certification body and apply for SQF certification with the assurance that you have gone through this process and you feel you have the readiness to go down that path, that next step. If you are prepared and have the necessary records to do that. And so I would recommend, once you've done this program and you feel like you've got a solid program under your belt, take the next step up to the next level. That's what we want to see as people growing in their food safety capabilities. Does the panel have any comments about that, moving from this program up to full certification?
Sure, I definitely think it's possible. The assessment was very detailed and thorough, and I feel like, with a little more push, you could definitely get there. So yeah, it's we've grown quite tremendously because of this.
Thank you so much. Are there any other comments from the panel before we wrap up? All right, thank you so much for joining us, and really appreciate the partnership in bringing this program to life. And we look forward to receiving your messages and questions. You can always email us at info@sqfi.com. I did not put our contact info up there, but if you would like to reach out to us, please do so. We're happy to support in any questions that come up along the way. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. Thanks to all the guests as well.